Entering the atmosphere in T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined once again by Mr. Doominal Crossing. Doom, what's going on, dude? How you doing today on this Super Bowl Sunday?
Pretty good. Thank you for extending that intro a little bit as I struggled to close my water bottle.
I saw that, yeah. I saw that. Actually, so I originally had to sneeze, and I was like, oh no, we're going to have to take to this, but I powered through it, and everything worked out, so... yeah, there we go. It's Taylor Swift Day. She's at the Super Bowl. First year at the team, leading him to the finals. There you go. Kind of neat.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I'm happy for them. I know there's a lot of like weird Taylor Swift obsession on both sides. People that like think she's a goddess. People that want her dead. I personally don't care. I'm happy for her and Travis. You know, I hope they're having a fun day today. Personally, I'm not watching the Super Bowl, though, just because, you know, I really, even though the Lions beat the Packers, which is my team, I really wanted to see the Lions go to the Super Bowl, man. What an insane story that would have been. Still an incredible season that they had, though, and, yeah, I hope they're able to go even further next year.
Yeah, call me when the Stanley Cup playoffs start, because that's what I care about. I'm an old prickly Canadian, and hockey's our jam, and I'm no different. I'm the stereotype there. So, yeah, not tuning into the Super Bowl today. And obviously, by the time that everybody's listening to this, it will be long done and over with. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we can... to be honest, who's playing? It's Kansas City and San Francisco?
Yes. Yeah, so you'd think like, oh, Doom's from California. He must love the 49ers. I think they're all right. I'm not. I've never been a huge 49ers guy.
The only football team that I ever kind of liked ever was the Patriots because it seemed like everybody hated them because they were like such a dynasty. Like they were just kind of like the heels of the NFL, and I was like, I like me a good heel, so I would root for that team.
That does not surprise me. That is a very Andy answer. I don't really hate very many teams except for the only team more popular to hate than the Patriots, which is the Dallas Cowboys. Which,
yeah.
Man, boy, do I love seeing Cowboys fans seethe.
Yeah, you know, the Toronto Maple Leafs are kind of the hockey equivalent of the Dallas Cowboys, where like every year it's just like, this is our year, we're going to end our Stanley Cup drought. These guys haven't won Stanley Cup since 1967, okay? Like, there are 6 other teams in the league, now there's 32. But every year it's like, this is our year, we're going to do so good, they're planning the parade in September, as the saying goes, so... Yeah.
Well, that's kind of why I wanted to see Detroit Lions go, because they've never won a Super Bowl before, and this is like the closest they've gotten in like decades. So like, but it's a whole other story that hopefully we get to see the light of one day.
Yeah, not to be. I believe that Dak is somewhere today at a Super Bowl party, and if you're listening to this on Tuesday, we wish him a speedy recovery. We hope that by now he's back up to speed and whatnot. Because I know that some of your guys' Super Bowl parties can get pretty crazy. But nonetheless, we are going to talk about Metroid today, believe it or not, on this Omega Metroid podcast. And I'm very excited about this because this was a last minute pivot episode where we had something that was on tap, and of course we've spent the last couple of weeks talking about Metroid Prime 4, and actually I had a lot of really good reception to our episode last week, Doom. I don't know if you did, but god damn, we talked a lot about wall running in our Discord. Holy.
Yeah, of all the things that I expected to talk about, like I figured that was going to come up, especially because that was fairly contentious. I was surprised the rail grinding did not come up at all once. Like I was expecting that to be way more contentious than the wall running, but yeah,
I
like,
guess
as far as I'm aware,
chord, I guess. The last thing I want to say,
I don't want to say struck a chord, but like at least people seem to think it was inoffensive. I don't know if anyone, because like if people were hyped, I feel like they would have still talked about that in a more positive light, but people just seemed at least to my perception, just indifferent on that.
Yeah, like there's a couple people I think that agreed with my positioning, but I think also like acknowledge as well, like listen, it could be done, like it could be cool. It's just it's hard to envision that without seeing it. But I will say,
Uh-huh.
I saw Big Griff post something, and he was like, it could be a similar mechanic to something that was in Shadow Complex, and I was just like, oof.
I saw that and I knew immediately, like, don't say that, you're losing Andy so hard right now.
Yeah,
No,
I hate to say it, but
I am going to say the same thing that I posted in the Discord. If, if you're someone who, you've never really seen wall running and you kind of have this image like, oh, this is some hokey late 2010s parkour fad that like happened.
yeah.
All I got to say, play Titanfall 2. Unironically, Titanfall 2, one of the best FPS campaigns ever made. And it's like it's a first person shooter, but it is also like legitimately a platformer. Like I'm very comfortable with calling Titanfall 2 like putting that in the platformer genre. Not like collectathon platformer, but like
Right.
platforming is such a huge part of that game. At least when it comes to single player, but even to the multiplayer from what I understand. But
And I have
yeah,
to
that
I have to
campaign
admit
is
too,
incredible.
like I always, and I don't know if this is a common thing or not, but like when you said Titanfall, I immediately was like, isn't that game like kind of bad? Like that was my first reaction, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's common. Is it not? Like I think a lot of people might think that Titanfall isn't that great, but you show me the Metacritic, it's a lot higher than I thought. A lot higher than I
So
thought, to be honest.
so I haven't looked up the first game, but I would imagine that a lot of that reception came after the first game because it
Yeah,
was a multiplayer only title. There was no single player.
right.
And I believe, and I could be wrong, but there might have also been some problems at launch. But I mean, that happens to so
Yeah,
many games now. Like it gets, I can't keep track of like what's busted at launch and what's not. But
yeah,
Titanfall 2, got the big tragedy with Titanfall 2 is it kind of got the Prime 2 treatment where it just got sandwiched between like major releases and it just kind of got drowned out. And nowadays it's like kind of a cult classic, which is weird to say, but we're almost at like 10 years now. Which
yeah. I
which
guess
yeah,
we would be.
but yeah, it's
Anyways,
kind of turned into a cult classic now. Like it's one of those games that occasionally you'll see like a big gaming YouTube video essay on it. It's one of those kind of games, and
well,
I definitely stand by it.
my point bringing that up is that we had a lot of great discussion about our Metroid Prime 4 episodes, but we decided to pivot away from. We were going to do another Metroid Prime 4 show, but honestly, I don't know what else we have left to talk about until we see something, which I do believe is coming imminently. But nevertheless, so we decided to pivot, and I'm really excited about what we decided to talk about today because it's one of my favorite things in Metroid. And you might remember way back when Dak and I did an episode ranking all of the Ridley boss fights, and I was like, you know what? I think it's time that we give our other man his due. So today's episode is all about Big Daddy Kraid. We are going to be ranking all of the Kraid boss fights. Yes, granted, I know what you're thinking. There's only 4 of them, so like there's not as many fights as the Ridley episode, but we're going to be ranking all of the fights in the series. We're going to be talking about some of Kraid's other cameo appearances and whatnot, and then yeah, we'll wrap it up if we have time. I wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking potentially about maybe Switch 2, maybe some of what's going on in the gaming world right now. But yeah, this episode, it's all about Kraid, baby. So I'm excited. I have a soft spot for Kraid. I really like this ginormous, giant, big dinosaur kind of guy. And I have a few pitches for you about how a really, really great 3D Kraid fight could and
Okay.
potentially should work. I'm thinking so. Yeah, let's get into this. And I wonder, Doom. So I have my list like number 4, 3, 2, 1. Do you want to go in order of chronological release? Do you just want to go with what our bottom fight is? How would you like to do this? You decide.
I think chronological is the best way to go, and also I have a feeling our bottom and our top five are probably going to be roughly the same, if not the exact same. But I
I
think
have
chronological just makes sense in this case.
I have a feeling that you're wrong, actually. So
Okay.
let's get started. So the first time that you ever fight the being known as Kraid is of course back in Nestroid in the very first Metroid game released 1987 in the States. And I gotta say, so this Kraid is nothing like the rest of the Kraid fights, right? Like it's not similar at all. They were very clearly trying to find out like what Kraid was supposed to be, and you could say the same thing about Ridley as well, for that matter. They were very clearly trying to figure out what these mini bosses were going to be in this game, and so this fight is very, very, very unlike any other fight. And also, I want to mention the official concept art of Kraid is awesome. Ridley and Kraid just both look like so outrageous in the Nestroid game. It's crazy. But I have a feeling that you ranked this last. I ranked it not last. I actually ranked this fight second. Second best.
You know, I think I know what last place is, and I don't agree with you per se, but I think I can understand where you're coming from on your real last place choice. But
Yeah.
we'll get there in a couple games from now.
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, this fight, I think it's really, really, really slept on. I really do. And I mostly say that because I appreciate the challenge of Kraid. Because, I mean, let's be honest, Kraid is pretty much in every appearance. He's not quite a pushover, but he's not far from it, right? Like, and in this fight, I just think that it's like, it's kind of tough. Like, it's actually substantially more difficult than the Ridley fight, which I like.
Oh yeah.
Because like you've got his whole front side is impenetrable, and he's got these crazy spikes that are shooting at you, that are kind of lobbying in the air. But if you go to his backside, you jump over him, there's also like these 3 spikes that are just directly shooting at you, which is very, very difficult to avoid. Now you can freeze some of these, but still it's a real challenge. And like it's just like it's actually ironic because it's almost like the Ridley fight where like you want to go in there and get as much damage done in as quick amount of time and kill it as fast as you can before Kraid kills you. And I love just kind of going in there. I drop down to my morph ball. I bomb back and forth, left to right. And hopefully I can get Kraid before, Kraid gets me. And I think that there's a real like energy about this fight that I really appreciate. And I also think that like the kind of the build up to Kraid in Nestroid in particular is just like so awesome. And like the music, I love that 8-bit music. I actually think it's still probably the best rendition of that music. And there's something to be said about the build up.
Really good.
Now, I understand that I'm going to be an outlier, and I think I think most people would have this ranked last on their list of Kraid fights because it is missing all that presentation and the actual battle that you come to expect when you're fighting Kraid. But I don't know. There's something about it that is just like super endearing, super challenging, super intense. That I love. So I ranked this number 2, and I suspect I might be the only soul that is going to do that. So there we go.
At number 2.
And number 2.
Wow. Okay. I was expecting like a number 3 there.
Nope.
I'm curious to see what you're curious to see what else you put below it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What say you?
So yeah, I'm gonna no surprise here. I'm gonna pick the basic normie answer and put him at last. That being said, I pretty much agree with everything you said though. I actually really like how Kraid is kind of like this unexpected skill check, which to be fair, any Asteroid in general is just skill check the game.
Yeah.
But this is like a big skill check, like especially in comparison to Ridley, and it's typically like the opposite. I mean, you go into Super Metroid, and it's just like Kraid's kind of a pushover in that game, and then Ridley is arguably maybe the hardest boss in the game, assuming you're not doing the normal fight with Dragon. Otherwise, that might be the hardest. But
yeah. Yeah, I think I'd still give it to Ridley, but your point is well served. Like he's a pushover, as we'll talk about in Super Metroid and other games. But in this game, this little bastard, he's like 3 feet tall, but he's tough. He's tough as nails. He's like a little pit bull. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
absolutely, yeah. And you can, and again, I am a big fan of when the game forces you to use both your morph ball abilities and your bipedal abilities.
Yeah.
And this is kind of one of those games where it's like you got to use both missiles and bombs together if you want to take him on optimally. And so kind of it's probably the earliest example of, a boss fight really incorporating that intentionally, unintentionally, or otherwise. But yeah.
Yeah. And like again, like with because I was really surprised, right? Because like I played Nestroid obviously previously in the past, but Super Metroid is really my introduction and my go-to title in Metroid. And so I was just when I started playing Nestroid again seriously, right before we launched OmegaMetroid.com, you just kind of go in with that expectation that like Ridley hard, Kraid easy. And it was totally the opposite. And yeah, I was just like, begrudgingly, I was like, okay, this guy, he's tough, and I like it a lot. But you're right. Like I do understand why a lot of people would probably have this fight last. It doesn't feel like a Kraid fight that we know it as right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get that, but for at least for this show right now, I wanted to give this version of Kraid his day in the sun. So yeah, I have a number 2. You have a number 4.
That, and then there's also just the inherent limitations of that era, which is also something I factor in. But I mean, it's also like when you compare it to like, some of the more, crazier cinematic Kraid fights, it definitely shows its age. But even stuff like, the Metroid 2 Queen, I freaking love that fight. And that's like, that was only a few years later.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And on the Game Boy for that matter.
Yeah.
I will say too, I think the really, really tiny screen helped that, but I guess you would have had just a small screen in in Nestroid. So okay, well, let's go on to our next entry, that next time that we fight Kraid. This is the birth of Kraid that we know and that we love. Of course, it's Super Metroid Kraid. This guy is a hulking skyscraper. He has all the classic things that we know and come to expect. He's shooting out the platforms out of his chest. He's got his little Castlevania death scythes that are being thrown at you every which direction. He raises himself up. I was gonna say midway through the fight, but you know what I mean. Like he'll appear and then like really kind of rise up. It's very very Godzilla-esque, and I think that's intentional. So I love the presentation, and I love the build up to this fight too. Like you go through, and Kraid has a very distinct part of Brinstar that is very specifically Kraid's lair. And I kind of love all of like the spikes and the coils and everything like that. The dead soldier outside of Kraid's lair, I think adds a lot to kind of the upcoming big fight feel. But what does take it down for me is, as we discussed, like he's kind of a pushover. And I'm not even talking about like really skilled players that can get that quick kill where you basically pop him with a couple super missiles as he's rising and then he's dead. I would say like even outside of that, if you hit Kraid with like 2 super missiles in the first phase, you probably only need to fight him with 3 more super missiles in the second phase to like completely kill him. And I will say this too. The fight, it's kind of paradox because like the fight is going to be better for the player the sooner that you can kill Kraid. Because the longer it goes on, the more challenging, the more difficult it is. But ironically, that kind of makes it like a better fight, being more challenging and more difficult, I think. So like you want to kill Kraid quickly in order to just get the fight behind you. But I don't know. It's kind of a fine line there, and I don't think it quite walks it as well as it could have. So while I love everything about this, I ranked it at number 3 on my list. What say you?
At number 3, interesting. I'm surprised. We'll get to the next game later. I'm surprised you ranked this below the next one we'll talk about. Because I basically have it the opposite way. Otherwise, yeah, I'm gonna put this above NES Troid Kraid. But again, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I don't know what else to say. One thing I will say, actually, is unfortunately, because I didn't play Super Metroid until after Zero Mission, I kind of interpreted that game like it was still really cool, like hearing like, oh my gosh, I remember that theme in Zero Mission. This is where this is where that music first appeared. Like that part was still like really cool and stuff like that.
Right.
But there is the mini Kraid, which is specifically, it is inherently tied to
Yeah.
NES Troid, which we just talked about, and how the mini Kraid, the mini Kraid fake out in that game is supposed to make you think like, oh, that's the Kraid fight from NES Troid.
Yeah.
Done. We're out of here, and then you get the Godzilla Rise. But unfortunately, already having played Zero Mission, I already kind of knew, and honestly, even before that, just playing Smash because of the Bridstar Depth stage. Like I was at this point, I was already very aware of like what Kraid really was at this point.
Yeah, which is fair enough. Like I wasn't surprised. Like I knew that Kraid was like this giant hulking beast too, because I played Super after I played Smash Bros. But like, yeah, I think that the fight, the presentation just really does add. And I had it on my list of like things to talk about actually, but we might as well talk about Mini Kraid right now. That's such a great little. It's a fake out, but I also think that it's like really like kind of interesting and really kind of cool because it makes you wonder, like, is that like a little baby Kraid? Are there more than one Kraid? Is there like a family of little Kraids somewhere? We kind of jokingly refer to him as Big Daddy Kraid, but like maybe there are smaller Kraids. Maybe that does make sense how, the Chozo. Well, like you think about it, like it doesn't really make sense that Kraid shows up on ZDR. But it makes a lot more sense if like there's more Kraids and they captured like a smaller version of Kraid, brought it to ZDR, and then that's like Kraid, right? Like, and maybe that's just what the species, is called. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's just my headcanon. But I really like the implications of little mini Kraid beyond just being like a nice little fun Easter egg for everybody that completed Nestroid.
Yeah, completely agree. I also adore the music that plays in that mini Kraid, the Kraid room, the da 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 da. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Bless you, Minako Hamano, for that absolute banger.
That plays a few times in Super Metroid, and every time is awesome. Every time is awesome. So yeah, I have Super Metroid Kraid ranked at number 3. What did you have it at the same ranking as well? Did I understand?
I'm not going to say what my ranking is now because otherwise it's going to make the next two very obvious in advance. But I'll just say that I am putting it above NES Troid.
Okay. Well, I mean,
and honestly, it might already be obvious considering the next two choices we have to go through.
Yeah, and I kind of anticipated that our list might look similar at the top, but I did think that they'd be different at the bottom, which I guess leads us to Metroid Zero Mission, and I let me just preface this. I think every Kraid fight is really good, and I love seeing Kraid. This is my least favorite Kraid fight, I think, of the bunch. And for a few reasons. But I will say, I love the kind of redesigned sprite of Kraid, like the thing, like, I don't know, the half moon almost like spikes around Kraid's face. I think that design choice really makes Kraid look a lot cooler. And just kind of like menacing. And I love the cutscenes where you see Kraid rising up and you can see the close-up of his eyes and he looks all evil and stuff like that. I think that is fantastic. But this is my least favorite Kraid fight for a few reasons, and I'll list them here. One is I don't think that the build-up, like the area of Kraid, kind of captures that same magic of Nestroid or Super Metroid to me. And which is ironic because you're in Kraid's lair here, but I feel like that area for me is not that strong in particular. I don't really like the rendition of Kraid's theme that plays in that area. I don't know. I think that the buildup is just kind of like, okay, like it's fine, but like I was really, really anticipating fighting Kraid in Super Metroid with the, those hallways with the mini Kraid with everything in there leading up to it. I don't think that this fight really offers anything new that any of the other fights don't, which works against it. Because, like, the evolution from Nestroid to Super Metroid to Metroid Dread, those are big evolutions in fighting Kraid, whereas this is just basically the Super Metroid fight just flipped on the other side. You're fighting Kraid on the left side instead of the right. And
I was literally just about to say that. I was like, hey, you're being too harsh, Andy. He's on the left side this time.
Furthermore, actually, it's way easier, I think, than the Super Metroid Fight 2, because like you can just grab. There's a little block at the top. You can grab it, fire your missiles, and they're lining up right in the eyeball to hit Kraid. So it's like it's even easier when it didn't need to be easy. It actually needed to be harder than it was, and I'm talking about just the standard zero mission difficulty. I know like you can have a little bit more challenge if you're going for hard mode, but like. Also, like, I mean, that's really it. Like, there's the 3 platforms that you're on. They stay there for pretty much the whole fight. Like, they eventually do fall away and whatnot, and you kind of have to climb the platforms that Kraid is shooting out. But not really. Not if you're fast. Not if you're quick and you're blasting Kraid in the face like you normally do in all of these Kraid fights. So, I think that this one just lacks a little something for me that the only new thing that I really like about it is, like I said, the redesign of Kraid's face, and it's not enough for me.
Mm-hmm. I think I agree with like 70-80%. There's a couple of minor things that I disagree, but I think for the most part we're pretty much on the same page with this fight. I actually really like Kraid's lair from a design standpoint, and I actually. Again, I know we have very different opinions on the Zero Mission soundtrack, but I really enjoy this rendition. Definitely not my favorite, but I think it's pretty good for what it is, and But I do agree with you that I think the while I like the design and the layout of the area, I think the theming I pretty much am like 1-to-1 with you on, and I really think it undersells the build up to Kraid and does not doom service. I feel like Ridley's lair in Zero Mission and the NES game as well, I feel like do a much better job of kind of leading to that anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
But in this game, yeah, that payoff just really isn't there. And like you mentioned, I mean, it's pretty much a worse Super Metroid fight, but it's flipped. I think there's still some fun to be had with it, as easy as it is, even on hard. Like I know you were mentioning hard mode, even on hard mode, like this fight is like way too easy.
Yeah.
But at the same time. There is some fun to be had when you fully optimize this fight and you're able to just pound Kraid in like 4 or 5 seconds. Like there is something super satisfying about that, but the fight is way too easy, and I would have much rather had like a bigger challenge than that quick adrenaline rush of just taking out this Titan in a few seconds. So, with that said, this is going to be my number 3 pick, which leaves only 1 spot remaining, and I think we're both going to very much agree on that one.
Yeah, and listen, I don't think that's much of a spoiler. I think you could have seen, that we were going to rank some Kraid fights here, and probably guessed what was going to be number 1. I do agree with you. Like, I feel like I don't want to sound like I'm, dumping on the Kraid fight. It's a quality fight. It's just like, it's a Super Metroid fight, just reversed, like there's not a whole lot else there for me, I don't think. So yeah, I think that it's good, but it's not great. It's not great like the next fight is great.
I will say, you know what, since we're talking about Metroid Zero Mission right now, happy 20th anniversary to Metroid Zero Mission, which happened on Friday.
Yeah.
So
happy
that
birthday.
completely slipped my mind until like later in the evening when I saw a Twitter post on that, which very, very wild. Like, I love Zero Mission, but I always forget that it came out the same year as Prime 2.
It does seem weird, doesn't it?
Yeah. And Prime 2's 20th anniversary very firmly planted in my mind, but Zero Mission I just always forget about for some reason.
Yeah, we'll do some Zero Mission content to celebrate the anniversary. I forgot to be honest with you. And you're right. Like, I always think of like 2004. I'm like, Metroid Prime 2. Okay, cool. And it's kind of too bad because like Zero Mission is such an awesome game. So we'll definitely have some episodes on Zero Mission in the future, but this year obviously. But the Kraid fight, I don't know if it's one that you necessarily like brag about, but it is a solid fight.
You do get the speed booster though, which is arguably some of the most fun you can have in Zero Mission with that thing.
I think so, yeah. I don't know. It still almost feels weird to me to this day. Speaking of that, you get the speed booster instead of like the gravity suit.
The Varia suit.
Or, the Varia suit. I don't know. It's so ingrained in my brain. It's like that's what you get, But let's go to our number 1 fight. This is not a surprise to anybody. I'm assuming that you are not ranking Super Metroid's fight number 1. Of course, we're talking about
I'm not.
Big Daddy Kraid's return after, after almost 17 years. This is the first appearance. And we're talking about the fight in Metroid Dread. Let's talk about some negatives to this fight really quickly before we go to the positives. One, I think that they missed a golden opportunity to have like the Kraid theme as the boss battle theme in this fight, because even if they would have went with like the dun 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 like that theme, I'd be like, okay, that's cool. Or they could have made like a like a rock and roll like Kraid, the Brinstar Depths theme.
I don't want to meddle. Not in a Metroid game, at least. I really like the Smash Ultimate like metal and violent theme, but that's Smash. That's different.
Yeah.
I don't want too many overpowering guitars in an actual Metroid game.
Well, and I'm not saying maybe rock and roll is like the wrong way, but like an upbeat kind of version of that song, like to really kind of sell that you're in this big boss fight that you're in for you're in big trouble if you're getting in unprepared. So that's one negative. The other negative is that there's really no storyline logic for Kraid being on ZDR, as we mentioned earlier. I don't think that takes away like big time for me, but it is something I think worth acknowledging.
Yeah, it is really interesting because, like, obviously story, while it's not my biggest critique of Metroid Dread, it's obviously, like, probably, like, the second in line in terms of critiques I have with that game. And yet, I really just do not care at all about, like, the Kraid storyline, inconsistencies, plot holes, whatever you want. Like, that's just, like, whatever. They put Kraid on ZDR because they can. That's why they did. Whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
So...
I mean, like, I'm kind of with you. It doesn't bother me, but I know that it does bother some people, and I think that's worth acknowledging as well. And so the last thing that I wanted to mention about the Kraid fight, and this could, I don't think anyone on this planet will agree with this critique except for me, but I always did think that it was like a little bit weird that we have like lava monster Kraid who's like in this lava fiery environment versus like the Kraid that we've kind of seen previously has been in like this kind of lush like poisonous area or whatever. That it always took a second for me to click that in my mind to like say like, okay, Kraid can survive in lava, okay, like that's cool, but the theming I think seemed a little bit off to me, just a little bit. I assume that you probably don't care about that.
Yeah, not too much. Like I don't know. It is weird that he just kind of like stands in like the lava, but like doesn't take any damage. Like I have to imagine like that has to hurt a little bit.
That's hot lava, yeah.
But...
okay, and the only other thing.
Meatball.
That's the truth. Speaking of spicy meatballs, we're going to talk about that quick kill in a second. But the only other thing that I wish. It's not even that I don't like. I wish was different. I wish this fight took a place a little bit later in the game so you could have a little bit more build up to it. And then that's pretty much everything that I don't like about this fight, which is very, very tiny. Do you agree with any of that?
I'm more so indifferent on it than I don't know. I'll just say I disagree with it because I don't really factor it into my thing at all. But it's like, yeah,
fair enough. And like these are minor critiques.
My big critique really has nothing to do with the fight itself. It's just that I wish Nintendo didn't freaking spoil this in the trailer before, like a couple months before the game came out, which I didn't watch. But again, like everyone was posting screenshots on Twitter, so eventually, I saw it eventually, and I was just like, man, how cool would it have been to not know that this fight was coming and just get surprised with the Big Daddy Kraid reveal? That's really, and so I wish they held off on that, but that's a minor nitpick at best.
I see what you're saying. I like, me personally, I was like, I don't care, especially because like it has no bearing on the story. But I do know that some people were a little bit put off by that, so I do wish that they would have, in hindsight, maybe done it differently, if not for my sake, but for other people's sake. Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about this fight, because this fight is awesome. My God, this fight is awesome. And it's not even like that complicated or long or whatever of a fight. But first of all, Kraid looks so amazing. This guy, God, he looks like this big, ginormous monster, but he's gross, and his belly buttons just disgusting. Like, oh, he looks so awesome.
The way it's intended, man. I love it when my Kraid is gross.
It looks so good and grotesque, and it looks good. Samus looks awesome in this fight too. Like, that's what makes some of this fight so amazing. Is Samus just looks like the world's biggest badass when she rolls into this fight. She's got the biggest FU stare on, and she's not backing down from this hulking behemoth, and it's just like, yes, this is awesome. The actual fight itself, I think, is like super, super engaging. I mean, it's still kind of the same Super Metroid fight, but it's much more involved, the first half particularly, where like you've got the plasma that you can shoot, you've got the ones that hit the floor and spread across the floor, you've got a bunch of different attacks, like melee attacks as well, that just it feels like a lot more satisfying, I think, to fight Kraid with the 360 aiming than it ever did in 2D Metroid. I think we could probably all agree with that.
It definitely, and I'd say this is someone who's maybe more critical of 360 aiming than like most people. Most people are just like, yeah, 360 aiming, that's the way to go, that's the future. And I'm kind of like, I still do kind of like that diagonal 2D aiming. I like being able to be able to move around and jump and have like a fixed aim, whereas 360 just kind of makes you stationary. And I like 2D Metroid more when you're moving around about. But in Metroid Dread, not an issue when you also have stuff like the flash shift. You are absolutely moving around in that game.
I think that's a fair critique. Like, I would agree with that to an extent. I miss, to a degree, diagonal aiming and being able to kind of, up down as you're moving. I think 360 aiming, the pros just so much more outweigh the cons. But nevertheless, going into phase 2 of this fight, this is where this fight is really awesome, because like just the standard version of this fight. So like you go in, it is, God, Kraid's belly just looks so disgusting. It really does. Looks so gross. You have all of those platforms shooting out at you, and they're coming like Mach speed. There's still like a ton of stuff coming at you. And you can climb those platforms in true, Kraid fight style. Get up to the top, get up there, and you can shoot it. You can shoot at Kraid's mouth from your little spider magnet little perch there, which is significantly harder to do here than it was ever in Zero Mission. And then Kraid comes in with that melee attack, and you can counter it. And those melee counters just look so awesome. Like, God, it looks good.
Yeah, I remember when we first did our review of Metroid Dread, I was a little harsher on this fight than everyone else, but I've since done this fight like countless times. Literally, like, I couldn't tell you how many times I fought him now.
Yeah.
And I've definitely warmed up a lot more. Like, I've never disliked the fight, but I guess underwhelmed might have been the word I would have used before. Nowadays, though, like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, this is just a sick, really well-designed boss fight.
Yeah.
And that's not even counting the quick kill, which is like
I want to talk about that. Yeah.
One of the coolest Easter eggs that I've maybe ever has been in a Metroid game. I don't know. In terms of like gameplay secrets that like you would have never thought a dev would have thought of.
Honestly, the only thing that's comparable is the Dragon quick kill, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
yeah.
And so what we're talking about, anybody that, I don't know who wouldn't know this at this point, but, and you can see this on OmegaMetroid.com, by the way. So if you actually, before you're supposed to, if you explore Dairon a little bit and you do the slide jump and you I'll call it sequence break, but the game kind of tells you, like, the Metroid Dread Report 7 or 8 or whatever it was, kind of tells you, like, hey, you can do this. And, like, there's nothing, you're not breaking anything. You can go and you can get the Morph Ball bombs earlier in this fight, and if you do that, you can execute the most awesome, most disgusting quick kill that you've ever seen. You roll up into Morph Ball form, go in the little Morph Ball cannon, you go in, and then you're like launched right into Kraid's disgusting, oozing belly button. You're laying bombs at Mach speed. You're taking big time damage, by the way. It's very similar to the Queen Metroid quick kill, not quick kill, but how you kill a Queen Metroid. Except obviously you don't got power bombs here. So you're bombing, and what's the grossest thing about this is when you're in Kraid's belly button and you're bombing, it feels like you're like pulsing out with each bomb. So it's like, and it's like, ugh. and there's all this like purple ooze coming out, and then Kraid finally dies, and the cutscene is awesome. Yeah, this is good stuff. This is an easy number one, and it's not even like in the top 3 boss fights of Metroid Dread, which is just a testament to how good this game is.
Oh yeah, I mean we've done we've gone over and over how incredible Metroid Dread's boss fights are, and it's a pretty telling that a boss fight as good as this. Like, I'm not even sure if I'd put it in the top 5. Like, that's how good these. Not a testament to Kraid. That's a testament to the actual bosses themselves. But yeah, and then you also mentioned the cutscenes. I freaking love the cutscenes in this. I love how the introduction. Samus is started off by being all cautious, and then she realizes it's Kraid and just immediately lets her go. Oh, it's just this hulking titan that I fought like 2-3 times at this point, whatever, and then just casually shoots him in the face. And then the ending cutscene where she's just casually like, it's so cheesy
good.
and goofy, but like if there's anyone that can totally hone that energy and make it believable, it's Samus, man. I love how extra Samus is in this fight.
I don't know, man. I feel like, is it cheesy and goofy, or is it just awesome? Like, I look at that and I'm like, this is awesome.
It's tropey, but it's also badass. That's what I will say.
Yeah, like, I guess you're right, but I don't know. Tropes are tropes for a reason sometimes, and like when they're done well, it's like this is so sick.
And I think this is done well. I agree.
Yeah. So really quickly, I know that we only have 4 fights here, so let's just recap it, and then we're gonna keep talking about some Kraid ideas here. So I've got on my end, I've got the Kraid Zero mission fight in last place. You've got Nestroid, is that right?
Yes.
We do not both have Super Metroid Kraid at number 3. I have Super Metroid Kraid at number 3. You have Zero Mission Kraid at number 3?
That is right.
All right, so I'm crazy, and I took Nestroid Kraid at number 2.
Crazy?
Heyo, I like that. And and you did the sensible thing and put Super Metroid Kraid at number 2, which I'm probably going to have to defend myself a little bit for that in the Discord, but maybe part of me just wanted to give Nestroid Kraid a little bit of love, because I feel like he doesn't get a lot. But I mean, there's no debate about number 1. Metroid Dread, all day, every day, twice on Sunday. This is an awesome fight. And we're not done talking about the Kraid appearances yet either. It's worth mentioning too, Metroid Dread, this wouldn't be the last that you see of Kraid. For some reason, Ravenbeak X is like this Ravenbeak Kraid amalgamation. Don't know why, but it's pretty cool.
And the game even sets it up. If you go back to Kraid's lair after the X is released, his body will be gone. Which, if you go back there at any point, I believe his body is still there. So, just a really cool attention to detail there by Mercury's team.
Very cool. And there's a couple other Kraid appearances that we should talk about as well. And maybe we should start out with like a proto fight that I didn't include on the list. One, because it's not like really a traditional Kraid fight, and 2, because I don't know if I've ever actually played this myself. And I'm talking about Kraid in Nintendo Land, where have you ever played that fight?
I haven't played that. I've played Nintendo Land before at a friend's house, but we never got to it. I do own Nintendo Land though, and I do eventually want to play through that whole. I do eventually want to play through that whole Metroid mini game, because it's one of the best ones. I think it's so much fun. Especially if you have a co-op partner. Like
I remember playing it a little bit when I got my Wii U, and I was like, yeah, okay, this is kind of fun. And I don't think I've ever played it since. But like there's a Ridley fight in there. There's like some cool stuff, it looks like. And there's a Kraid fight, which looks kind of cool. You've got this like mechanical Kraid that comes up, and you're in Samus' ship, so you have to, bonk Kraid on the mouth, and then you can fire your missiles inside, which go into like the little bullseye in Kraid's tummy. It's just kind of like a cute little fight, and I believe that it's the halfway point of the game when you fight Kraid, and then your main fight is fighting Mother Brain. Ridley, not Mother Brain. I think that's how Nintendo Land goes. And by God, we're gonna do an episode of that one day. I know we've talked about it for absolutely forever, but I don't know. Maybe we can get our Wii U's hooked up, brush off the thick layer of dust on those things, and see what this game is all about. Because
I'm looking at mine right now. It's still hooked up. I haven't touched it in a while, but
mine's outside,
it is still hooked up.
Maybe that will be something that we have to do, because I watched a quick video of this fight, and you know what? It looks charming. It looks very charming.
Yeah.
And the music actually was kind of cool. So there you go.
Yeah, it has some leitmotifs referencing Brinstar, weirdly enough. It doesn't reference anything from the actual Kraid themes, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's like a nice little bonus fight for all of the hardcore Wii U fans out there that played through Nintendo Land. We're gonna put that on our list. We're gonna do that one day. One day we'll do that. And then of course another, maybe arguably the most famous Kraid appearance not in Metroid is of course in Super Smash Bros. Melee, which leads us to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And I can't remember if that stage was in any other Smash games, but
Nope, just those two games.
just those two. So yeah, Kraid is he's a hulking behemoth in this game. He's like 400 feet tall in Smash, and one of the best stages I think in Melee is Brinstar Depths, where you've got that amazing Kraid remix. It sounds so awesome. I don't know why they just didn't call it like Kraid's Lair though, which ironically is all fiery and stuff too in the background instead of like what I was talking about with like the poisony foliage kind of atmosphere. But nonetheless, it's a very cool stage. Kraid is in the background. He's smashing the stage. He's spinning it, and I always loved like that one like little island, like that no man's land island that you could sometimes get stuck on, and like you could never, like it was so far down that like you couldn't jump and get back up. You just kind of have to hang out until the stage turned again. Yeah, an iconic appearance by Kraid actually, which is funny because like when you think about Super Smash Bros. Melee, there really was like a lot of Metroid references there, like Kraid being there, Ridley being in the intro. They did Metroid kind of right in that game, and yeah, I remember just like thinking like, wow, like Kraid just looks like so unbelievable, and the glow up that they gave Kraid in Ultimate on that stage too, he looks awesome with those Zero Mission style like side spike things on his head. I don't even know what you call those, but he looks awesome.
Yeah, I don't know, the headpiece, like
Yeah, I don't know, something like that.
but yeah, we all ranked. I want to say we all three of us ranked this stage pretty high when we did our Smash stage rankings. But yeah, I love Brinstar Depths. You know, it's been there since 2001 now. That's weird to think about, but yeah.
That is crazy. That's a long time.
I also do agree with you though on like the theming, where that's something. I don't want to say it's bugged me, but I think it's been a missed opportunity where I think they really should have gone with like, you know, that Super Metroid kind of Brinstar jungle atmosphere.
Oh, yeah,
especially because, you know, you have it paired with, you know, the regular Brinstar stage. That's already kind of like your rising acid stage. And even though that doesn't play a role in the Kraid stage, it's still like a big part of that theming. And I think it would have been better to have something that stood out a bit more and was unique. But at the same time, if they did Super Metroid, maybe we wouldn't have gotten that incredible Brinstar Depths thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I mean, regardless, like it's a great stage. It's an awesome appearance by Kraid, and it's almost I mean, like I would love to have had a playable Kraid at some point in Super Smash Bros. I think that would have been fantastic. But like, I don't know how many people were really clamoring for that. Two, I don't think that Kraid would translate as well as Ridley, and like. Three, like I almost kind of think like being that presence on that one stage is almost better served as a homage for Kraid. I mean, Kraid would show up in all the other Smash games too as like stickers and trophies and all that fun stuff. But that's really Kraid's story in Super Smash Bros. And Melee is definitely like the star of his appearances there for sure.
that's why Andy is trying so hard to bring NES Kraid back, because he knows that's the only possible way he can get him in the Smash.
Can you imagine if like NES Ridley and Kraid were in there? That would be awesome, because these guys, they're little freaks. Like they don't look anything like the Ridley and Kraid that we know. Like
they don't.
If you haven't seen the official Kraid NES artwork in a long time, you should Google it, because you're gonna be startled when you see it.
He looks like a hedgehog.
Yeah,
a little furry hedgehog.
But like not the type that's showing up in Sonic, the type that's showing up in like
no
Five Nights at Freddy's. You know, he looks creepy. There's another Kraid. Not even an appearance. It's not appearance at all, but a piece of concept art, a very famous piece of concept art. We've talked about it before, and this is Metroid Prime concept art, which is kind of well, I guess first of all, I think we've all seen this. I think Kraid looks really fantastic. You know, it's obviously like like a mock-up, so nothing really further came of it, but it's still like pretty cool. He's, you know, he looks like this big angry monster. You've got like the metal kind of things on the side. His head kind of looks like a UFO actually. It's kind of weird, but kind of cool.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I wish I could have seen what that could have been, but at the same time, like Metroid Prime's already pretty incredible, so I don't feel like I'm missing out too much. But and especially after Metroid Dread, now that we have gotten that kind of modern Kraid interpretation.
Well, I was pretty adamant that Kraid should be in Metroid Prime 4, but I feel less adamant now. But go on.
Well, I was gonna say actually, because I was gonna hand it off to you. I feel like, you know, talking about 3D Kraid, this is a good segue for you to pitch me what your 3D Kraid fight is.
It was, and it is, because I think that our boy should get a 3D treatment, and I have a couple ideas for how you could do that. And I'm not gonna blow out these are pretty standard ideas, I think. But the one thing that I kind of kept on coming back to when I was thinking about what's the best way to fight Kraid, and the best way to combine all of the different abilities and things that I like about the other Kraid fights while, you know, like making it Metroid Prime. So there was a couple things that I wanted. I wanted to include like I'll call this one like option 1. So option 1, I wanted to include like the Nestroid qualities that I really like, where it's a difficult fight and you've got spikes and stuff like that that are shooting from every direction at you all the time. And I also wanted to include obviously the presentation of you know, some of the Super Metroid fight, while also realizing that Kraid is now, he's like this hulking thing, right? So like I don't just want to have it where Kraid is the same size as you. I feel like that's very anticlimactic, while also wanting to incorporate the stuff from Metroid Dread that worked really well, making this big, gross, disgusting monster that you're using a few more gameplay ideas in order to fight. So I kind of kept on coming back to this idea that I had, and I'm gonna test your Metroid Prime knowledge here. There is a room in the Chozo Ruins where you have to unlock 4 symbols. It's a big room with a tree in the middle where you have to unlock 4 symbols on your way to fight Flagra. You know what room I'm talking about?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get that room out of my head when imagining a Metroid Prime Kraid fight. And in my head, I was like, maybe instead of a tree in the center, it's Kraid. And you have like all of these platforms that he's shooting out. And this is where I don't know, because like I guess there'd have to be some platforms that are just like always stationary, and like the platforms that he shoots out either are going slow enough where you can jump on them, or like maybe you have an ability to slow down time, kind of like in Samus Returns. I don't know, something like that, right? But like I was like, that would be awesome if like you had to like work your way up and around these platforms while kind of dodging all these like treacherous things that are shooting at you, and eventually you could square off, you could fight Kraid, and like maybe it's like one of those like boss as puzzle kind of ideas where like once you get to the top, you shoot something, Kraid opens his mouth, you could quickly roll in, either bomb him, power bomb him, missile him, whatever, right? And then once you do that, you have to go back to the bottom and work your way back up, and there's a lot more obstacles. I think that fight could be like really engaging, especially if like maybe there was like, as the fight kind of wears on, there's like some little sacks that come out of Kraid, and all of a sudden rising from these sacks are new mini Kraids that are enemies that you got to deal with as well, that can give you health and ammo and stuff like that. So I think as one option, that would be like kind of a cool Kraid fight. Your thoughts to option 1?
You know, Andy, I gotta say, we've had quite a lot of contentious debates throughout the years on this podcast.
Yes, we have.
And this is not one of those. I am completely with you, 110% on everything you just said. This is pretty much exactly how I envisioned a 3D Kraid fight. Have you ever played Shadow of the Colossus by any chance?
Oh yeah, love that game.
I have not, but I've seen a lot of gameplay videos. But I've always kind of envisioned a 3D Kraid working kind of like a Shadow Colossus fight. Not in the exact same way, you know, obviously there's a lot more platforming, you're not literally climbing the beast itself.
Yeah.
But I've always thinking of like, you know, a fight with 3D Kraid, it's not about the fight itself, it's about that journey, it's about that climb, you know, it's about that platforming challenge, both by the environment and by, you know, Kraid himself, like interacting with that environment. Yeah. But once you do get to that top and you're able to deal damage, like, I mean, come on, you're Samus Aran, like, he's a chump, you know? But again, getting to those weak points, you know, getting, you know, to that open mouth, and all that. That's where that real fight is. That's where the challenge is. That's where the cinematics and the spectacle comes in, up until like the grand finale where you deal the finishing blow. And so
Yeah.
pretty much everything you just laid out there, I feel like is like 1-to-1 with like what I would go with.
Awesome, because I think that would be like a really engaging Kraid fight, and like you could have his arms flailing at you, you could have like all the stuff kind of coming out. Maybe Kraid's got some new tricks. Maybe he's got like, I don't know, acid breath or whatever, something.
Sure, why not?
Now we do have to figure out a way, because I think like ideally what you want is for like you to have to like jump on the platforms that he shoots out of his chest. So we have to figure out a way to justify why those would be in the air still and like not just lodged into a wall or something like that. Or maybe the arena is a bit smaller and they are lodged into a wall. I'm not really sure, but either
I think you could still lodge them into the wall, or maybe there's like, I don't know, maybe there could also be like, rebar, something like sticking out in the environment that it could occasionally latch onto. Another thing I always imagine is one of my all-time favorite Metroid boss fights is actually not an official one. It's, we were talking about the official one earlier, but the AM2R Metroid Queen fight, probably my number 2 or number 3 Metroid boss fight of all time. Absolutely adore that fight. And one of the coolest things about that is how, as you progress through each stage, it keeps destroying more of the arena and keeps cramping you into a tighter and tighter space. And I think, like, if we're having this Hulk and Titan Kraid over here, like, what a cool opportunity to show like some more environmental destruction and continuing to change the playing field and all that. I think that would be a really cool opportunity to jump on.
Yeah, I could be down for that. That sounds like a heck of a time to me. You're dodging, there's explosions behind you, like that sounds awesome. So I wanted to touch on something that you said, because you're right. This fight is designed in a way that it's more of like almost an environmental challenge than it is like a fight versus Kraid, which I think is appropriate, because like if you're fighting a behemoth monster, like you're gonna have to be fairly strategic in picking out a very specific weak point. Whereas like I think with the Ridley fight, like that's a fight where it can just be like a close quarters brawl. Every hit lands somewhere and he's just got like a monster bar of HP or something like that. But I did have a second option, and I wasn't as fond of it because it's more of like a fight. But I think what could work as well on like a larger or maybe smaller scale is, as I was envisioning kind of like the fight with Metroid Prime at the end of the game Metroid Prime, the fight with the being Metroid Prime at the end of the game. I was envisioning kind of that fight as well, how you're kind of like focused and you're in a narrow kind of hallway where you're directly looking at Metroid Prime. And you've got your different ways that you can attack. There's different projectiles coming at you. I think a one version of a Kraid fight could work well with that as well, where maybe you just have Kraid, and Kraid doesn't necessarily like come at you like Metroid Prime does, but you can still have the projectiles coming at you. You can still have the stuff coming out of his belly. You can still have the stuff being shot out like the acid and stuff like that. Maybe Kraid could, maybe there's some grooves in the ground that kind of like the Metroid Prime fight, Kraid fills them with acid. You need to avoid him for a second. I think that fight could work as well. I don't know if I would be as interested in that fight, but I think it would be like a decent blueprint for a different kind of Kraid fight that's certainly more like combat action oriented.
This is kind of unrelated to all of that, but when you just mentioned that, it just occurred to me that the first phase of the Metroid Prime fight, it's kind of like a 2D Metroid fight if you really think about it. Like, yeah, you're still moving on the Z-axis to like move the side to side, which you need to do to dodge projectiles, but like you're always facing Prime. You're primarily going forward and backward, and you're basically just switching side, and it's basically like a long 2D hallway rather than a giant dome
like
circular arena.
Yeah.
Like, that just occurred to me. That's really interesting.
So I think that could be a fun fight still. You could probably, because you're in a little bit closer quarters, I think that you could maybe change the environment a little bit, like you were just saying with the Queen Metroid fight from AM2R. I think it would be easier to do that kind of activity in like a more closed, smaller scale. And maybe even that's part 1 of a Kraid fight, right? And like once you get to part 2, then it's like the big arena where you got to jump up and platform or whatever. But I was kind of thinking as a way that you could potentially get a a different style of Kraid fight. The only thing that I feel like I wouldn't know quite how to rectify is like, I think Kraid would have to be a little bit smaller for that encounter to like literally fit in that type of arena and to like get the belly spikes and like the, you know, the mouth and stuff like that. Which I would personally love to see, like just a big behemoth hulking.
Yeah, I would do
Kraid.
I would do the exact opposite. Like I would make him even bigger. Like turn him into an actual like Godzilla-esque Titan where he's just standing like, you know, like half a skyscraper tall or something ridiculous.
You like I want like Quadraxis big for Kraid. Like I want.
Oh yeah,
I want big.
I want bigger than Quadraxis.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be real.
Exactly. So yeah, like I said, I don't know exactly because I do think you might need to shrink down Kraid a little bit for this style of boss fight. It wouldn't be my first choice, but it probably would be my second. If they couldn't figure out a way to make that first fight really engaging, and I think I would be okay with this fight if we had it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is how I think that we could see our boy Big Daddy Kraid show up in Metroid Prime eventually, and I think he will show up in Metroid Prime eventually. Like I think, especially now that Retro is kind of back in control, I think maybe there's got to be at least a couple people there that are taking a look at this old concept art and are like, you know what, we should try that. We should try and bring that back because that was a good idea. So I have to believe that maybe not Metroid Prime 4 since we just had him in Metroid Dread. Maybe Metroid Prime 5, maybe Metroid Prime 6 if we're so lucky. You'll get the return and finally a 3D fight with Big Daddy Kraid. So that is how I would do it. That's on my wish list. I don't know. Anything?
I'll let my uncle who works at Retro know to don't forget about Big Daddy Kraid when Metroid Prime 5 comes out. Because I assume Prime 4 it's too late at this point.
It probably is
Prime
too late.
5.
They could have the Kraid DLC though. Big Daddy.
Oh,
DLC.
there you go.
That would actually be like pretty
expansion.
sweet, to be honest with you. If there was like an extra area that you could unlock with DLC and there's like a big boss, I'd pay a couple bucks for that. Also, like
I'd pay more than a couple bucks.
where's our Dragon rematch? You know, like let's bring him back. It's been a long time. I think a lot of people would be happy to see Dragon back, or honestly even Fantoon again. I know that we had Fantoon, but let's bring him back in under different circumstances.
Justice for Crocomire. Actually, just kidding. I don't want Crocomire. I don't want Crocomire to come back because that means I'll have to kill him again, and I hate doing that. He's poor guy. He didn't deserve that.
He did not deserve that. So I always really just feel like, God, I feel like a bastard when I see him coming up boiling alive. His skin is on fire. I'm just like, God, this poor guy. He didn't do anything. Really, I kind of invaded his home, and here we are.
He was just vibing.
Yeah, so that's all I really have to talk about with Big Daddy Kraid here, and we have a couple minutes left, so I really quickly, I did want to talk to you, and this is like a complete curveball. It's got nothing to do with Metroid, so if you want to sign off right now, feel free to do so. Thanks for checking us out, but I do want to talk really quickly about what the hell is going on with Microsoft. What the hell is going on with Microsoft? There's tons of rumors out there. It seems crazy. And listen, I'm not. We're
gonna find out. We're gonna find out later this week.
We are, yeah. It's so for anybody that's not kind of filled in, I guess there's a bunch of rumors that are swirling around. The first rumor, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but what got everything kicked off is there was a rumor that basically all Xbox titles are going to be multi-platform going forward, which I think begs the very natural follow-up question of like, why would I ever need to own an Xbox then? Ever. Which then brought another rumor saying like, well, if that's the plan, Microsoft must be looking to get out of the console business and just having their titles appear on other platforms, which on like the surface makes sense and doesn't make sense, because it makes sense in a way that like, I think that the Venn diagram of people that enjoy certain types of games on Xbox and PlayStation is almost like the same. Like I think for those types of gamers, there's not like a big difference. And if there is, like and what I mean by that is like, I think like a lot of people who own Nintendo consoles buy Nintendo consoles for Nintendo games that don't appear anywhere else. Whereas I think that like maybe to a certain extent people buy a PlayStation for their exclusives, but I don't think it's as much as Nintendo, and I think Xbox is like literally not almost at all that kind of mindset. So on one hand, it doesn't seem insane to me because like, you know, if you have a very similar type of gamer that owns a PlayStation versus an Xbox, maybe you have an opportunity to sell more stuff to that type of gamer on PlayStation. But like, it does seem weird that like they just spent like, I mean, like, I don't know, how many billions of dollars did they just spend buying Activision, buying Blizzard, buying like all of these Bethesda. Is it Blizzard or Bethesda? I can't remember now.
Both. They bought
Is it both?
Activision.
Okay.
Yeah, Activision Blizzard is one entity, and then
yes, you're right.
ZeniMax, which owns Bethesda, is a different entity.
You're right. Thank you. I mean, they spent like, what was it, like almost like $100 billion or something like absolutely insane on Activision. And
yeah, it was 70 billion for Activision Blizzard, then I believe it was 7 billion for Bethesda. I can't remember that off the top of my head.
I'll need to watch. So $80 billion.
Only $7 billion.
Like,
you know.
What? Like, that says to me like you are not getting out of the console business. But who knows? Because there's all this stuff going on with that Activision purchase as well. So I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going on. I do know that it does kind of make me sad to think that potentially there might be a world where there's no more Xbox consoles. I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't know. It does seem strange because like it seems like I think that there's two things going on with Microsoft right now, game-wise, that are just like really, I don't know, bogging them down. And the first is like, I think that their first-party IPs are like dead in the water. Like Halo.
Yep.
Halo is nowhere near what it was 20 years ago. Halo should be like Call of Duty level, and it's not, and it never will be again, which is insane. The last Halo game that came out was, I think, panned by everybody that likes Halo. This would have been good to have Dak on here for this. But you go you go through and you're like, okay, like what about the other like franchises, IPs that Microsoft owns, like Gears of War? I don't know if that's doing, like, I think it's fair to say that franchise is in a better spot 15 years ago than it is today.
Absolutely.
I think it's fair to say like Fable, that was a big Xbox franchise back in the day, and like that is also like dead today.
I mean, we know a new game is coming out, but we haven't really seen that much of it. So
yeah, you're right. But like even like when Microsoft bought Rare, like what did they got nothing out of that. Mm-hmm. Like they're just getting like the first Perfect Dark in like 20 years almost, and like there's nothing else. It's like
and that new project Everwilds, I mean, we heard about that 5-6 years ago now, and we still haven't gotten any new info. Like, has it been canceled? Are they still working on it? Like that game has been in development hell longer than Metroid Prime 4.
and my point is, and I think there's only like one Microsoft IP that's kind of like immune to this, and I think that's Forza. I think Forza today is in a much better spot than it was 10 years ago, but I don't know that I would say that about any other Microsoft IP, honestly, which is why they're buying all these companies.
Forza alone can't sell Xboxes. Like,
no way.
You got to have more than that.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah, so I'm going to refrain my thoughts until I hear Microsoft's official announcement in regards to like this whole situation, because like the rumors are kind of all over the place. There's some rumors where it's like, oh, it's just Hi-Fi Rush, maybe Starfield, and there's some rumors where it's like, oh, Halo and Gears and Fable are also going multi. So it's like, I don't know. I'm going to wait for Microsoft to make their official statement later this week when that drops before I make any further opinions.
Well,
that being said, there's two angles that I'm looking at this. There's my personal angle and there's the financial angle. And personally, on someone that owns a Series X, one of the few consoles I bought at launch, I am very disappointed with Microsoft this console generation. In fact, I have the spicy take that they, from a game output, I think it's worse than the Xbox One generation, which was notoriously panned for not having enough exclusives.
At least the Xbox had Halo, the killer app back in the day, right?
Like, well, the Xbox One, I mean, it technically didn't. Yeah, no, the Xbox One did. It launched with
hold on,
which was like,
you're not talking the OG Xbox, right? You're talking the Xbox One.
Yeah, the Xbox One.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's also
not
what the
OG
hell are you
Xbox.
doing naming your consoles so ridiculously? Like honestly.
Yeah, yeah, God, Xbox ever 360 was like the last good console name, and they've lost the plot after that. But no, I'm talking about 2013 Xbox One,
Right.
notoriously panned for not having enough exclusives, and I think that game had a better game roster at this point in time than the Series X does.
I'm taking a
And
look at my
even
Xbox One games, and I don't know if there's a single game that is not available also on PlayStation.
like and here's the thing, even the Series X, like even if you look at it with a quantity versus quality output, again, I just mentioned Killer Instinct. That is a beloved reboot of like the Killer Instinct series that is like universally beloved.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at you look at the Series X today, like what are the big exclusives from just last year alone? You had Hi-Fi Rush, which that was kind of, a much smaller title, but that was like widely regarded and critically acclaimed.
Yeah.
Fine. Redfall, absolute disaster of a title. Oh my god. And then Starfield, which kind of got mixed reception. You had some people that loved it, some people that were in the middle, some people like me that thought it was boring and pointless. And and that was just last year alone. And so I think Microsoft, in terms of a game output, has just been, really, crapping the bed.
It's been terrible.
Different.
And Phil Spencer said as much. Like he was just like, listen, like we're in a rough patch right now. But that kind of brings me back to my point about the IPs that they have, because like I think that there are some certain IPs, if you're Microsoft, that makes sense to license out to other companies. Like Minecraft makes total sense to have that on Nintendo Switch. If they ever made a new Banjo-Kazooie, I think that makes total sense to have it on Nintendo Switch. I would even say Starfield. That makes a lot of sense to have that on PlayStation. But where it doesn't make sense is like your Halos, your Forzas, your Fables, your Gears of War. But like those series, like they're all in the dump right now. And like I love Ori and the Blind Forest and that series, but like that's not gonna be what really moves the needle. And so it's just like they've got a lot of work to do to repair their IP, which is one of the reasons I think they're in this problem. The other reason I think is kind of like messed up, because it's on paper and maybe in practice a little bit even too. It's a really consumer friendly idea, and I'm talking about Game Pass. But like the economics behind it, I don't know how you do it. Like it's because you're giving away games for like a fraction of the price. Because I don't think it's like this anymore. But like I remember a couple of years ago when they launched it was like get 4 months of Game Pass for like $3 or something like that. And it's like, okay, cool. And it's like, oh, as a way to entice you to get Game Pass, here's like all these brand new games that are going to be on Game Pass day one. So it's like, it's a friendly, it's a friendly service for people that don't want to spend money on full price games. But I don't know how they're like making anything back. And I mean, listen, they're Microsoft. They're like one of the richest companies in the entire world, but like,
the richest company. They're estimated, I believe, 3 trillion. Maybe it's 1 or 3 trillion. I can't remember. And it was too much money. Too much, frankly.
I thought they were number 2 now behind Activision or Amazon. Sorry, that's I guess that's not true, but
they're always swapping plays as them.
I will say
Disney,
this, like,
all those
like rich companies are they're horrible for the world. I just want to make that clear. But like these rich companies, they're just like, this certain division isn't making money. It's not making us more money. It's not making us 4 trillion instead. Like let's just like everything has to be done in order to make money, which is surprising to me that this service Game Pass, which is very consumer friendly, has existed for as long as it has. Because I don't know like how they do it, other than just saying like, well, we're Microsoft, we're just going to lose money.
Yeah, also unrelated to this conversation, but it should go noting that we're talking about how Microsoft is one of the richest companies in the world, and yet despite that, they just laid off nearly 2,000 employees like a couple weeks ago, and that is just, and so many of those employees literally found out the same day that we found out, which is so infuriating and disgusting, and nothing will be done about that, which sucks, but that's the state of our industry. And yeah, I'm gonna stop talking before I get into more expletives, but does not make me happy reading that news.
It's pretty lame. Yeah, definitely pretty lame.
Yeah.
But I think like it's like Game Pass has like, I think, really taken away people's incentives to buy full price Xbox games. Because, like, why would you?
That's how I played Starfield.
Yeah, like, well, like, why would you buy? Like, why would I spend like? Why would I spend $80 or I don't know, $80 Canadian on a brand new game when I can maybe get 2 months of Game Pass at $17.99 for like the base edition and beat the game in that time and just be done with it? Like, it's basically like renting a game. And I don't know how that used to work economically back in the day either, but I'm sure that there was some kind of agreement. But like, I don't know what it is, but so that's the problem. But I think like their big problem, which obviously they've been trying to buy their way out of this problem, is like their IPs are they're just dead. Like Halo. Like,
well, that was their whole proposition during the Xbox One generation when people were criticizing them for no exclusives. They're like, listen, we're trying to weather this storm right now, but we are investing in these studios so that we have exclusives ready for our next line of consoles. And again, like I said earlier, I think it's been worse on the Series X. For at least for me personally. Maybe obviously game preferences, are different between people. Maybe some people will disagree. Yeah. But for what I like to play, and I like to play, not just indie stuff, but also like, a lot of those big tentpole AAA games. I think it's just been worse on Series X across the board.
It's been tough. Like so I don't own a Series X, and but I own every other Xbox, and I was like, I'm not picking up a Series X. Like, why would I? And I think that they still haven't answered that question. Like, you look at PlayStation 5, it's like, okay, we got God of War, we got Horizon Forbidden West, we've got Final Fantasy 7, we've got like, you've got this, and it's like, what's on Xbox? That's gonna Halo Infinite? Like, that game was panned, and like, I don't know. And like, if I'm a customer now, and I'm like, well, okay, great, Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out. I already own a PlayStation. I'm not buying an Xbox for that, right? Like why would you? It's just it's a tough spot, and I don't know like really what they're gonna do, to be honest with you. So yeah, like, so the rumor that I'm reading is Starfield's gonna go on PS5. I guess they've got that Indiana Jones game. Is that a PlayStation game, that Indiana Jones game, or is that an Xbox game?
That's an Xbox exclusive for now. I know that was a game that was rumored to be like a temporary exclusive, but again, we don't know.
That's what I'm reading.
We don't know that right now.
I guess I would also say, like, because that was like the big, like they just had like an Xbox like Direct or something like that, didn't they? Not that long. And like Indiana Jones was like the big game, and it's like,
yeah,
is Indiana Jones like really relevant in 2024 right now? Like, maybe he is. I don't know.
I love Indiana. I know you're not hot on Indiana Jones. We were talking about this back when that showcase first dropped. But even that showcase, like, I don't know, it looks interesting, but the footage also looked very early. The character models in particular, there's this weird uncanny valley about those facial models, and I can't explain it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I want to see more of this game, but I really like machine games. They did the Wolfenstein reboots recently, which are awesome. Highly recommend everybody go play those Wolfenstein games. And they also did
I played one of the Wolfenstein games. It is awesome.
Yeah, and they also worked on some of the new expansions for the for both the Quake 1 and 2 remasters that dropped recently, which are also awesome. So yeah, I love machine games. They're developing this game, so
yeah,
they are very good at making games where you shoot Nazis, and so
who doesn't like to shoot a Nazi, by the way?
It's my favorite American pastime.
Absolutely.
If you ask me,
it's something that I celebrate doing.
Yes.
I guess we'll have to follow up and see what happens, because this announcement is coming next week. It seems like a tipping point, though, doesn't it? Like, when you look at the state of Xbox, and it's just like there's no big IPs that you can only get on Xbox. The value perception is plummeted because of Game Pass, which again is ironically a very user friendly idea. And Dax talked about this before, but I'm kind of joining him now. But like, Xbox games going to PC day one as well. Yeah.
Which at this point, yeah, I may as well, now that I have, my new PC built, like pretty much everything from this point on, I'm just buying on Steam and GOG as well. Like, the only reason I still have my Series X at this point is, for a lot of those backwards compatible titles that never were ported to PC, just for that ease of access. But like, theoretically, if those did go to PC eventually, like, why would I keep it?
I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. It's gonna be interesting. We're definitely gonna have to follow up on this, but I thought it was a conversation worth having just because I think it's very fascinating. So we'll see. I guess we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, we'll do a follow up, and by God, we'll see what happens. So yeah, that is gonna do it for us this week. I was really happy that we got to dedicate a whole show to my boy Kraid. Probably the only show we'll ever do that's dedicated only to Kraid, but by God, it was good to do it nonetheless. So we got a few. I want to tease a couple episodes that are coming in the future here because we got a few fan favorites that are coming back, including the imminent return of Alien in Review. That's coming back within the next month, and we're actually at the only Alien movie that I've never seen. So I'm really stoked about this. I've never seen Alien vs. Predator Requiem. I've heard it's nuts, and I am stoked to watch it.
I saw it as a kid and remember absolutely hating it, but I have not seen it since then, and I can barely remember anything about that movie. So maybe I'm due for a rewatch as well.
Yeah, so that's going to be coming back. The manga analysis is going to be coming back, and we are going to be covering part 1 of a beloved fan favorite. And we're in direct territory. I kind of think that we're going to skip a direct and just go right to the Switch 2 reveal, which I think is imminent. And hey, if that's coming, well, I don't need to tell you what might be coming with it.
There's a chance that by the time everyone's watching this, we have that partner showcase revealed, which not my first choice. I would rather have a direct mini, but even so, and this might be a spicy take, I would rather have a partner showcase than a general direct because, again, to me, it just, oh no, I want that partner showcase, baby, because that means we're just around the corner, man. It means we're this close to Switch 2 goodness. If it's a general direct, I still think it would be getting revealed this year, but it might not be as close. But if it's a partner showcase, man, we are on the precipice.
I mean, we're on the precipice either way. We gotta be. So,
to quote the legendary Reggie Fils-Aimé, my body is ready.
My body is ready. My soul is ready for the Switch 2 and Metroid Prime 2. All right, we're gonna get out of here. What did I say?
You said Prime 2, which I'm also hoping for. But yes, Prime 4.
Maybe that was that like a Freudian slip for maybe a Nintendo Direct that we're gonna see. Maybe I'm clairvoyant or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm ready for Metroid Prime 4 and Metroid Prime 2. And you know what? I'm even ready for Metroid Prime 3. So there we go. We are going to get out of here. Before I do, Doom, do you have anything you want to plug before we go? Anything?
Thank you. I appreciate you for asking beforehand, before me having a nervous breakdown. I actually do not have anything to plug today, though, but thank you.
Right. You know what? I do have something to plug, damn it. I've been reading this really awesome book, The Tetris Effect by Dan Ackerman. Anybody interested in like the creation of Tetris should check it out because it is a much, much more fascinating story than I think a lot of people think. It was obviously created at the tail end of the Cold War. There's all this geopolitical drama. Very, very interesting. So you should check it out. The book's like $20, and it's got some classic real life Nintendo characters in there as well. The always affable Howard Lincoln shows up, so it's very cool. That being said, we are going to get out of here. Thank you for checking us out this week and for checking us out all the time. It means a lot. And of course, you could check us out on a few different places. First and foremost is OmegaMetroid.com. You could get new episodes, guides, maps, walkthroughs, all of that kind of stuff. Hey, if you're going to replay Zero Mission for the first time in a long time, you forget where to go, check out OmegaMetroid.com. We got you covered. And you can check us out on Twitter as well. We're at OmegaMetroidPod, at Spiteri316, at Doomidalcross, at DACCity_. And we're also over on Blue Sky, all the same handles there as well. So check us out. Give us a follow, give us a like, give us a subscription wherever you get your podcasts. Recommend us to that Metroid fan in your life, and tell them where they can get their weekly Metroid fix. And hey, if you like what we do, maybe leave us a sweet 5-star review as well. That would be very, very cool. And lastly, Doom and I collaborated not that long ago, speaking of Kraid's Lair, on the Great Metroid Area Ranking, our ongoing monthly series that we have over on our Patreon channel. You can check it out over on patreon.com/SBNet. And by the way, for any of you guys listening on podcast form, if you want to see our smiling faces you just head on right over to our YouTube channel. You can watch these full shows with video and, well, really just video of us looking a little bit rough, but talking Metroid nonetheless, so check that out. That, my friends, is all the plugging that I have to do, so we are going to get out of here. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Check out OmegaMetroid.com, and until next week, everybody, take care.